Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Mark Jazanowski. This is the Morning Whiz. I'm a clinical psychologist. I do private practice in Oceanside, San Diego, Fallbrook, San Diego, northern San Diego County. I work in the community, but I've worked primarily with combat veterans, and people who struggle with complex trauma. And what I recognized recently is that I've been doing this podcast called the Wizard Podcast for about a year and a half now. And I've never really promoted it. It's more of a practice, an exercise, a way of learning, a way of sharing with friends and family and clients. And I figure if it resonates with people, it'll naturally grow. But I've been doing this podcast for about a year and a half, and I've learned a lot about myself over the course of doing that podcast. And part of what I've learned is that, all of us are walking around this planet collecting data. And we live in this culture where people are constantly imposing their perception on others. They're saying, you should think this way, you should feel this way, this is the correct way to be. If you're not living this way, then you are one of the other. And I try to think the opposite of that. I try to think in terms of all of us. And I've learned this as a psychologist. I've learned this as an artist. I've learned this just living my life in a way where I'm very, very curious about how people perceive their existence, how people navigate their life, how perception is unbelievably influential in how we perceive freedom, how we perceive our life, how we tell the stories of our lives. The lens by which we see the present moment is unbelievably influential on how we see the world around us. And doing this podcast for the past year and a half has taught me a lot about how I see the world and how I feel and how I perceive and how I share my voice. And it's been like this practice of learning, because I'm not an entertainer. I don't have experience being in front of a camera or talking on a microphone. So it's been this journey of, okay, when you hit that record button, how can you simply put words to a perception or an experience or a certain way of being in a way that is honest and maybe useful for someone else. And I find that all of us are walking around this planet collecting data. All of us have lived a unique life. All of us have a unique story. All of us are becoming something, and all of us are working on being. Every single human being has a story of becoming. Every single human being has worth and value. And I find rather than telling people how they should think or how they should feel or what political party they should be a part of or what products to use, I think it's more useful to look people in the eye, even children. This is part of what I do in my practice. It's part of how I do the work of being this thing we call a psychologist. But really it's just holding space with people and looking at them and saying, hey, what has the world taught you? How has the way that you have walked this life influenced how you see yourself in the context of the world? What story are you telling yourself? What's important to you? What do you think? What do you think? Tell me your story. And I find that by being really, really curious about how people navigate their lives, how they superimpose their perception and their programming and their memory into the present moment, and by working on sharing that on my own through this medium, this amazing medium of connection and storytelling that we have in today's world, the fact that I can sit down in my backyard and I can hit record and I can share my thoughts with you in the morning, It's just amazing to me. So recently I realized that I spend every morning, I wake up every morning and I try to check my attention and I try to get with my breath. And rather than jumping on the freight train of thought or to do lists or sacrificing myself to some other goings on that the world tells me I need to be a part of, I try to use the first 15 minutes of my day to be really deliberate about setting my attention and setting my intention and moving my body in a way that makes it more limber and more open and more relaxed and more deliberate and strong, and just using that first 15 minutes of my day to really set myself on the course that I would like to be on. To me, that is really what freedom is about, is taking charge of the present moment that you are in, and or allowing the present moment to be what it is. So this little morning whiz thing for me is just a little wizard podcast snapshot every morning of kind of where my mind is in the morning. What is going to come out in the morning. Every single morning brings about a little bit of a new insight, a little bit of a new attention. Sometimes I wake up cranky and I got to work on that. Sometimes I wake up sad and I got to work on that. Sometimes I wake up depressed and I got to work on that. How many of you wake up feeling already oppressed? How many of you wake up already and you have 20 text messages, 30 emails, a whole bunch of obligations just waiting for you? You don't get a moment to think your own thoughts. Immediately, you're serving some other thing. You're tapping into some other thing. You're plugged into some other thing. And pretty soon, you're not even in tune with what you would want to create if you were using your conscious ability and your free ability to do so in the present moment. And I notice that in my little headphones, I can pick up sounds really well. So I'm not sure if you can hear the horn honking in the distance. Someone's car must be violated. Someone's car is in danger, so there's a horn honking. Hopefully it doesn't come in too much. So where's my mind this morning? I was working on a painting yesterday, and a lot of times painting for me has become more of a practice, a meditation, an exercise. Unless I'm doing a commission for someone or I'm trying to come up with a certain body of work, painting for me has become a space that I use to express honestly in the present moment without necessarily restricting myself so much. And I kind of watch a story emerge on the canvas. And part of what was coming out yesterday was on the top of the canvas. I had some nieces visit recently and I did some painting with them. And a lot of times I'll just put up a canvas with people and just teach people how to let go, teach people how to be present, teach people how to just express honestly in the present moment. One of my nieces had written or spray painted the word free on top of the canvas. And that was an expression of how she was feeling in the present moment. So I just took that canvas that I'd worked on with my nieces and I just started playing with it, and I started working on it yesterday. And I needed to allow myself to be in a space of expression, and I needed to allow myself to let go of fear and to let go of oppressive thoughts that were kind of plaguing me yesterday in the context of things that I'm navigating in my life. And what emerged as I painted was this abstracted image of someone wearing multiple masks, and this word free was on top of the head of this image. And what I realize is that for most of us, I gulped on my words right there because it's kind of a big thought I want to boil down into simplicity. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist from Germany back in World War II, pre-World War II. He lost his entire family. He was in Dachau, in Auschwitz, and others. He was in the worst concentration camps of Nazi Germany and managed to get through. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. There's a really famous quote from Viktor Frankl that goes something like, between stimulus and response is essentially where freedom lies. And that's certainly not how he quoted it, but that's the gist of it. Is something pokes you, some sort of stimulus from the external world or from your own mind triggers you, pokes you, influences you, instigates you in some way. You wake up in the morning and you have a thought, and that thought leads to another thought and another thought and another thought, and pretty soon you're on this freight train of thought and you're going down the tracks and you don't know how to get off. Or you wake up in the morning and you look at your phone and here's the news headline, and here's the thing: be afraid, breaking news, watch out, this is happening, go do this, go do that, think this, think that. Before you know it, you have been deeply influenced by the perception and the influence of the external world interacting with your perception and the influence of your memory and your programming acting themselves out in your physical body, including your brain, the place that we create the mind. Pretty soon, we don't even know that there's a space between stimulus and response. The stimulus and response is happening so fast, it's creating so quickly that we don't even know that's where freedom is. That the space between stimulus and response is the eternal now. It will always be now. And that's not some great revelation on my part. It's something many, many great people have taught and brought our attention to, is the space between stimulus and response is where you create. It is where freedom lies. The extent to which you are aware of and willing to observe without judgment or reaction the manifestations of your mind and your body in the present moment in the context of external stimuli coming in, the extent to which you're able to say, oh wow, I'm wearing these lenses, I'm wearing these masks, and these lenses are made up of my attachment to memory, the memories that are telling me how I perceive my life in this present moment. These lenses are made up of the programming in my mind and body of having navigated this life in the context of this time and space and the culture and the influences and the power structures and entities that want to co-opt our mind and body in a way and influence us to think and feel and perceive and consume in a certain way. The memory and the programming are right there, ready to influence your perception of the present moment and to co-opt and take away the freedom of that space between. And pretty soon your response from stimulus to response happens in a few hundred microseconds. That response is now a response that is instigated by fear. It is instigated by propaganda. It is instigated by someone else or something else telling you how you should think today, telling you how you should feel today, telling you what you should be afraid of today, telling you what you should purchase today, telling you what is on your to-do list. And we sacrifice that freedom by not recognizing that the space between stimulus and response is really where freedom lies. So that's all I got for you today. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Just something for you to think about, something for you to chew on. That's where my mind is this morning, is really noticing the space between my mind, my body, all of the little things that the world or my life is influencing me to think and feel and perceive. And I'm working on being in a state of acceptance and honesty and practice in that eternal now, in that space between. So I hope you all have a wonderful day today. This is Dr. Mark Jesenowski. This is the Morning Whiz. Take care.